San Diego sports leader, it is the Mighty 1090. I'm Darren Smith. We have spent some time this week talking a little bit about the NFL and the Chargers opening up camp coming up on Thursday. Let's spend a little time talking about San Diego State. San Diego State will open its season on August 30th. They will be playing Northern Arizona at home at Qualcomm Stadium before traveling the following week and going to North Carolina. Let's say hello to Rocky Long. He is in his fourth season as the head coach at San Diego State, and he's joining us from Media Day, Mountain West Conference Media Day, which is being held in Las Vegas. We always appreciate a couple of minutes of his time. Rocky, good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Well, Darren, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks.
Well, let me start with this. I remember not too long ago that Mountain West Conference Media Day was here in San Diego. Now, listen, obviously I'm biased that I think San Diego is a better destination than Las Vegas. Can we get this thing back out here in San Diego at some point?
Well, if it was up to me, it would be in San Diego because obviously the weather's nicer and I could stay at home and come from home. But Vegas, I guess they tell me, is the easiest place for everybody to get to. And if you see the number of people on the streets, it must be an easy place to get to.
I remember they had it out there at Coronado, and it was great to see all the different coaches and a lot of the different players. I think this would be a great – what's the weather right now in Las Vegas?
Well, according to the phone I have on me, it's 104 out there now, and it's supposed to be 108 as a high.
Okay. I mean, can't you say this to the Mountain West Conference Commissioner, Craig Thompson? Can't you say, what are we thinking with this?
Well, I'll say it. As soon as we get off the phone, I'll say it to him, but I have no influence on what the Mountain West Conference does. I hope I just have some influence on our players playing well.
Well, good enough. Well, Coach, it's here. You know, I don't know that we've had a chance to talk in this capacity about your season last year, but I do want to go back just because I thought it was so impressive what you guys did. Now, you start the season 0-3, and if I'm not mistaken, you play New Mexico State in your fourth game. You're trailing at the half. You figure out a way to win that game, come from behind, and then you go on this great run where you win 8 out of 10 and you find yourself back in another bowl situation. Do you remember what was said at halftime of that New Mexico State game? Because whatever it was, it seemed to turn your season around.
I wish I remembered what was said at halftime because it worked, obviously, but I don't remember. I think we're an experienced staff, a mature staff, and we don't overreact to anything. And I thought in the first 2 games of the year, I thought we played absolutely horrible. And then in the third game of the year, we actually played pretty well, but ended up losing to Oregon State. So I thought we were coming around. And then we played poorly in the first half against New Mexico State. And I know we made some adjustments. I imagine there was some emotion in there at halftime, and our players were just good enough to barely pull that one out. And after we pulled that one out, all of a sudden we got some confidence, and we started playing a little bit better. And by the end of the year, we were a decent football team.
As a coach, when you go into your offseason and you're done with the bowl game, do you spend more time thinking, now, how did we end up 0-3, or do you focus more on how did we end up winning 8 out of 10 down the stretch?
Personally, now, I don't know however everybody else does it, but personally, I go back and review everything that we did, and I've done it twice now, and try to figure out what we did well, what we didn't do well. Is it coaching? Is it scheme? If it's coaching, we got to change it. If it's scheme, we got to change it, and we try to improve what we did. Now, a lot of it has to do with the players coming back, and this year, Quinn Kaler's our quarterback, ended up being our quarterback the last 7 or 8 games of the year. When we were playing well, he's coming back. If he plays well again, I think we'll start a lot better than we did last year. And we'll make some changes to scheme. We're making some changes to our practice schedule, and hopefully all that works.
We're talking to Rocky Long. He's the head coach, San Diego State, Mountain West Conference Media Day happening right now in Las Vegas. Coach, what is the talk of the conference? We've seen it throughout the last couple of weeks. We've seen the SEC Media Days, the ACC Pac-12 having its media days here today, and there seems to be a lot of conversation about the state of college football. What about the talk of the Mountain West Conference? What's being discussed there amongst the coaches and people who represent the conference?
I think you're right. I think everybody's a little nervous about where college football is going. I think some of the schools have huge advantages already on how they're able to take care of their athletes as compared to what we do. I think the rules that are coming out now, it's just going to give them a little bit bigger advantage than they already have. So I don't think it really changes the landscape. I think we're at a disadvantage, but I still believe in if you can recruit well enough and you can coach them well enough and you get a chance to play those guys, there's a chance to beat them. And if we beat them, they'll have to let us join up sooner or later. And I think most coaches in this league believe that we're at a disadvantage. It might get bigger than it is already, but as long as we got a chance to recruit and compete, we're pretty happy about that. Now, we want to be a part of those guys, and the only way to do that is to keep beating on them.
And if I'm not mistaken here, to bring something up from last year, I think that's why there was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will, that's why you felt so strongly about San Diego State making its fourth consecutive bowl game last year and talking about how big of a deal that was. And that doesn't happen a lot outside of the Power 5 conferences. And Power 5 is just a term that's being tossed around, so I'll use it in this situation, right? But that's why you brought that up the way you did last year during that press conference, because of the landscape of college football and how much it matters to be going to 4 straight bowl games.
I think that's exactly right. I think when you're doing something that is unusual and special, everybody should know, and try to belittle that and say it's not a big deal when very few schools throughout the entire country, even the ones with the big money, have ever done that, is downgrading our kids, downgrading the program. And for us to build the program to a point where they have to accept us and maybe even let us into one of their leagues, we have to spout out. When we do something different or special that's a little unusual, we got to spout out and let everybody know it and not go the other way.
I loved it. I thought it was great that you stood up there at a podium and during a press conference and defended your program. I thought you should get high marks for that last year. I did.
Well, some people believe that and some people don't. Just look at my emails.
I'd love to see him sometime. We're talking to Rocky Long. He's the head coach at San Diego State. When you go to 4 straight bowl games, though, Coach, I do wonder, for the people who say, okay, this really isn't a big deal, there's 100 different bowl games, so what's so special about it? Do you feel like now, what is the next step for San Diego State? You're where you are. You've established yourself as a program that goes to bowl games, that's in contention for a division title, perhaps a conference title. What's the next step for San Diego State?
Well, I think to me it's very obvious. I think we got to continue to compete and have a chance to win the conference championship. You have to get to the point where you can do that every year, year after year after year, no matter what the situation is. And then there's some stability in your program. And then you have to recruit enough talent so that when you play, like this year we played North Carolina and Oregon State, you got to be able to go to their place and beat them. I think that's what Coach Fisher's done with the basketball team. I think we can do that with the football team. It took Coach Fisher a lot longer to do that than people remember it did. But I think you got to get to the point where you're one of the best teams in your conference. And then when you go to Oregon State or you go to North Carolina, you win one of the two or you win both of them. When you really got it going, you win them both.
Is this the time of the year, Coach, where I ask you about the Mountain West Conference preseason poll, and I ask you about it, and you tell me that you don't care about it? Was that where we are? Is this that time of the year?
We can do that again if you want.
Well, hey, I'll say this. You guys, I know you weren't picked to finish first in the West Division of the Mountain West Conference preseason poll, which is voted upon by the media, but you did get as many first-place votes as the team that ultimately was picked to finish first. So any consolation in that? Do you take anything away from that whatsoever?
Here we go again. No, I don't know or care about that. And if I was picking it, I would have picked Nevada because they have the best quarterback coming back in our division.
That's interesting. Now, Fresno State, they seem to have lost a lot, whereas you guys return a bunch of different starters, including your quarterback. So I thought there was a chance you guys would be picked first in the West.
Well, I think the college game, Division I college, and the pro game, the NFL game, is so dependent on how well your quarterback plays that the best quarterback should get the advantage in any of these kind of polls. And right now, the best quarterback in the West Division is at Nevada.
We're talking to Rocky Long. It's San Diego sports leader, the Mighty 1090. August 30th, San Diego State plays its first football game against Northern Arizona here at home. Speaking of quarterbacks, Coach, since we haven't had the chance to ask you this question, what's the real story? Was there anything to Phillip Rivers' brother, Steven Rivers? And we love this story because it was nice and convenient and tidy for us. Was there anything to Steven Rivers' potential interest in the San Diego State football program?
No, there was some interest, and we did have some interest in him. The trouble is that we did not have a scholarship to offer him. You're limited on the number of scholarships. Every one of our scholarships had been given to somebody or promised to somebody, so we didn't have a legitimate scholarship to offer him, and we were honest about it, and they understood that, and they went someplace. He ended up at a place that did have a scholarship for him.
Okay, fair enough. And now he's at Vanderbilt. We'll see the way that works out. Coach, one of the things that people have talked about in college football, sort of overarching this year, and I'd love your thoughts as a defensive-minded guy, that would be about the up-tempo offenses. Nick Saban's name has been brought up, some of the other fellas, about the up-tempo offenses, that it's a disadvantage for defenses in college football. Your thoughts on that subject?
I don't believe it's a disadvantage for the defense if the officials will call the game like they're supposed to call the game. And the way they're supposed to call it is like the NFL does. If the offense substitutes players, they have to give the defense a chance to substitute players. What has happened in college football to this point is that they're not really giving the defensive players enough time to get in there or give you a chance to substitute. Okay, so as soon as we can get that worked out, I think everything's fine. And I think the offense should be able to go as fast as they want to, snap the ball as quick and as often as they want to, as long as they don't substitute players, because now it's fair. The offense is running the same number of plays as the defense, and everybody's chasing the ball and so forth and so on. But as soon as they put fresh bodies in, if they don't allow you to put fresh bodies in, then there's a problem. And I think that's what college football is right now. There's a problem because they're not letting the defense substitute as often as the offense does.